Kevin Feige will still be in charge of the Spider-Man films. MCU and Sony's reported new deal will give us Tom Holland's appearances in more Marvel movies. Kevin Feige reportedly working out a deal with Sony to have Tom Holland's Spider-Man appear in more films in the MCU after Spider-Man 4. So with Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4 set to go on floors next year, new deals with the actors are reportedly being planned by Marvel and Sony. Apart from Holland's involvement, rumor has it that Marvel and Sony themselves are working out a deal where the actor appears in more MCU films. To date, Holland has only appeared in the MCU Spider-Man trilogy and the 2 Avengers films after making his debut in Captain America Civil War. While the upcoming Spider-Man 4 has finally found its director, Kevin Feige has reportedly began to plan Tom Holland's upcoming appearances in the MCU. The Marvel chief is reportedly working out a deal with Sony Pictures, who partly owns the rights to Spider-Man, to get Holland to appear in more MCU titles. While Marvel Studios has produced Tom Holland's Spider-Man films, Sony Pictures still owns the right to the character and related villains. The two studios had struck a deal to allow the character to appear in the MCU. However, now another deal seems to be in the works with more Holland appearances after Spider-Man 4. Holland was last seen in the MCU swinging across New York City after the whole world forgot about the existence of Peter Parker. The blockbuster success of Spider-Man No Way Home gave a boost to the MCU, which seemed to be slacking after the pandemic with their streaming offerings. Holland first appeared as Spider-Man in Civil War. Despite Sony Pictures having the rights to the character and his villains, Feige seemed to strike a deal with the studio to allow them to include him in the MCU. Marvel also produced the 3 Spider-Man films, and he also appeared in Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. According to the latest scoop by industry insider Daniel Rickman, Feige and Sony are reportedly working on a new deal for Holland to appear in more titles after the upcoming Spider-Man 4. Fans seem to love this news and have expressed their opinion. A lot of people just kind of weighing in on this here. And then obviously there's a lot of hinting on the Daredevil stuff, and which is, I think, I would guess why they would do this in the first place. But I'm going to throw to you here first, Coy. You're the Spider-Man expert here. You hear the news and this potential. I mean, Daniel seems to be this guy, Daniel RPK. He had come out of nowhere over the last couple of years and seems to be pretty damn accurate. But this is something that makes sense. What say you?
I think that Sony is looking at the path they've already tread and went, oh, Madam Web was the worst we could have done. And I think they're trying to not let that happen again. I think that Venom, they had a tone that they, kind of figured out would work, and then they are running out of that with Venom 3. I think that Morbius, they took they got Achilles, but they didn't get kneecapped like they did with Madam Web. So I think they're kind of trying to figure out what their universe is going to be. I personally, as you guys know, think Kraven looks good. I personally am looking forward to Venom 3, but we haven't heard anything else out of them since those. Like, we haven't really seen the next step in Sony. So I think it's really smart for Sony to double down on their connection to Marvel. I think Kevin Feige in general has been very transparent about restructuring everything. This does, to me, kind of nullify my theory that Secret Wars was going to revamp everything. It seemed to me that after Secret Wars, they were going to fresh start everything. But if they're making this big of a deal, Spider-Man's here for like another 10, 20 years. I mean, even if it's 5 to 10, it's still past Secret Wars. So I think it's smart, but it definitely rewrites what I assumed was going to happen with the X-Men and everything going forward.
Winston, what do you think?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think, truthfully, the way, essentially, this might be the way in which everybody gets to have their cake and eat it too. I still don't like the fact that they're attempting to not give us a street-level Spider-Man movie, that they want to immediately jump back into multiversal, multi-Spider-Man. Like, just, God, you guys got me saying Spider-Man like that now. I hate you.
Louis Spider-Man.
John T. Spider-Man.
Louis Spider-Man's coming into town, and he'll be here for the math test.
But I say all that to say, it feels like one of those situations that if Feige pulls this off with that negotiation, it is able to get Sony. You could potentially tell Sony, look, we'll still get your money. Let us do this first, because it is going to help us set some stuff up. It gives us a little bit more of a grounding, and you'll still be able to run to the bank with however many Spider-Man you want to put into a live action film after the fact, or any grandiose sort of stuff that you're doing. Like, I feel like this is a situation where Feige is aware that he needs Spider-Man in order to truly move forward with what he wants to do. And so if you're pitching to them the long game and negotiating that out, that you might actually be able to get them to come I had to stop myself because there's a phrase that I've been using since I was, a teenager that I don't think I can say on the show because we're supposed to be family friendly. But either way, it just calm yourself. That's essentially what this feels like to me in order for the longevity of success.
Yeah, I mean, look, it makes all the sense in the world and for Sony to make this deal, but whether it's connecting it to Daredevil, putting Daredevil in there. I think the other thing too is eventually they're going to want to do stuff with Miles Morales, right? As you're saying. So it's.
I think this is also sorry to interrupt. I think this is also the first time that both Sony and Marvel are in a position of their names aren't strong in the mouths of comic book fans right now. I think that Sony has had hits and misses, but overall people are like, oh, it's a Sony movie. I don't know whether to trust it, but then they still make a decent amount of money. Madam Web showed that isn't always the case. And then Marvel, which is, Morbius historically too, been... Bro. But Morbius wasn't as big of a deficit. It didn't do well, but it wasn't like we don't know if we get to make movies anymore for Spider-Man.
I get it. My only minor pushback is that they thought that It's Morbin Time was a thing, re-released the movie, and then actually lost even more money by the nature of re-releasing.
That's like your favorite story. Winston loves that story.
I mean, it is hilarious, but I also think that was like some Gen Z intern misreading the internet. Like Maybe. That definitely was like 3 or 4 misguided people made a big decision. But I think Marvel is not in the position they were the last Spider-Man negotiation. Like the last time they talked with Tom Holland Spider-Man and did all that, Marvel was still this golden goose, whereas right now it isn't that. And I'm wondering what kind of leverage each company has with each other in a different era.
Well, here's the thing. You're not wrong when it comes to where Marvel is as far as quality, right? Now, if you look at the shows, there's no argument. Right? But when it comes to the movies, even though we don't there's a few of these movies, whether it's the Marvels or the Eternals, didn't have a lot of great box office. But even the ones that we're not crazy about, Thor: Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange, you can still say if you're Bob Iger, hey, those movies still made a lot of money, man. So when you're making that negotiation, because they don't negotiate through quality, these people, when they should, but they don't. They negotiate through receipts. And so Marvel still has that over Sony because they can say, look, the only anytime you put anyone in your movies that it's making money is when it's with us. And you tried to do that with Morbius by putting Michael Keaton in there, and that backfired on you. And we shouldn't even let you done that in the first place. So I think that they still hold the cards. I
think they hold more cards. I just think they're not infallible. I do think there's a different perception on it.
Less cards. Yeah.
Less cards. They have more, but less than they had.
Which is fair. And I think that for this, though, they're like, okay, look, this is what we need to do. We both need to do this. Let me run this. We know where we want to go with this. It will help you. It'll elevate you. It'll put money in your bank account. We will tell the stories that we want to tell because, as we know, Spider-Man has a pretty big part in Secret Wars, right?
I mean, I think they're going symbiote saga.
Right.
I mean, I honestly, my big tinfoil hat theory is that Null has a symbiote that ties into Spider-Man's universe and Null ties into Secret Wars. And then through using Null and Venom 3, we then get a symbiote that's going to attach to Spider-Man. We're going to have a loose symbiote story. And then the trilogy after the Secret Wars stuff is going to be Spider-Man with the Black Suit.
But what's this mean for Tom Holland, though, right? Because Tom Holland, at one point was saying, and I had a great time doing it, and he's a really good actor, and this is going to lock him into Spider-Man for a very long time. He's going to be Spider-Man as much as, Hugh Jackman was Wolverine, but on that same argument, Wolverine, or Hugh Jackman rather, was able to do many other movies. I think The Prestige, I think these other movies. He's able to do a lot of other movies, and I just think that it means that Tom Holland and his kids and grandkids will never have to work ever again.
Pretty much. That's what it reads to me, is that they're going to back up the Brinks truck for him. And I think that he does enjoy playing the character. I know he's talked about the pressure of it as far as like living up to it, which is part of the reason why John Watts walked away as director. He's like, his words in the quote essentially was like, trying to catch lightning in a bottle like that again really isn't going to happen. Plus, I want to explore other things. I'm sure that's the same thing with Tom, that I'm sure he wants to go explore other roles. But if you kind of want to set it up like, you see some players as far as like sports where it's like, this is my main league. This is the one that I play in every single year. But then in the off season, I like to go play over in China, or I like to go play in Australia or whatever. That's kind of what this feels like for Tom. This is going to be your bread and butter. And then in between, you're shooting the other stuff that you want to do.
Yeah.
I also think the industry is extremely different than when Hugh Jackman was coming up, for using that example. I don't know that you get to make as many movies as bold as The Prestige or make as many bold swings as Prisoners in between this stuff anymore. The industry is so largely just tentpoles in theaters, indie movies on streaming, and I don't know if that comes back.
Well, but I guess that's what I'm saying, is that you're probably not going to get The Prestige where it feels sort of like an indie artsy movie, but it's obviously a main release that's in theaters and all that. I hear you on that one, but I can easily see that while Tom is doing Spider-Man that drops, 2025 and then 2027 and then 2029, that he's at the same time in 2026, he's doing like an Apple movie and an Amazon movie. And like, even though those may not be like necessarily always, wide release, they are still end up in a coda situation where you could potentially win Oscars and things like that. Like, I think he'll have plenty of space to do the stuff that he wants to do, while at the same time stacking enough money that, you could burn it, half of it, as the Joker did, and still have way too much damn money.
That's a good point. I'm just curious of where they're going to go with him. And and if we cover it a little bit deeper, I guess, on the street level side of it, right? Because, you know that they kept talking about how Feige wanted the street level thing and Rothman and the rest of the crew wanted the big kind of multiverse thing. Now, I wonder if they came to terms with that inside of this potential agreement, because it seems to me, Coy, that if they're going to go and combine this street level Daredevil and be able to put Spider-Man in there, then how much more beneficial would it be to make the next Spider-Man for a little bit more grounded? But I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it should.
I think this Kevin Feige conversation sounds like it's edging towards that direction. Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about Destin Daniel Cretton is, as a director, I could see him doing either one of those. And I love that. I think that Shang-Chi was a balance of two worlds.
Yes.
And so if you're going to do a multiversal story, he's the guy. But he's also incredible at hand-to-hand combat and filming things that feel artistic and unique. Street-level stuff. He's a guy. So I think that maybe they hired the guy that could do both, and now they're figuring out which movie it is. It's not unheard of to have 2 or 3 scripts at the ready and then just like, okay, this is it, and go. So I would love if we found out later that this Kevin Feige conversation was to get the street level one that we all want. I'd also love if that leak you guys covered last week was a, what does the culture want? And then like all of us going like, we want street level. It's pretty obvious. Like, I'd love to find out that everyone on the internet, it felt like in 3 days, the entire internet went, that sounds like the movie we want. And then maybe we'll make that movie.
You know what the weird part is? When you did that with the mic, that's the best your mic has ever sounded.
He's not wrong.
All right, so
that sounds so much better.